Hello and welcome to the Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today I'm looking at the 2011 to 2014 series Teen Titans, part of DC's The New 52. The Teen Titans got their start back in the 60s, during what we would now call the Silver Age of comic books, as several of the teenage sidekicks of major superheroes got together to battle a villain named, believe it or not, Mr. Twister. This eventually led to them formalizing their arrangement in a separate superhero team. Now, just why there were enough teenage sidekicks to adult superheroes to form into their own super team is, well, maybe a question for another time. The Teen Titans proved popular enough with teens, though I do feel like these days we'd hear a lot of complaints about how this is pandering, but oh well. But the group didn't really take off until they reformed as the New Teen Titans. With Marv Wolfman and George Perez at the helm, the New Teen Titans saw some of the most notable and influential moments in their entire history, including introducing fan-favorite characters like Raven and Starfire in the supervillain Deathstroke, Robin becoming Nightwing, and the events of one of the most famous story arcs in DC history, the Judas Contract. With the success the New Teen Titans had, the group largely became a staple of the DC universe going forward, leading to even having their own spin-off teams and TV series. That's series plural, even though it's the exact same word as when it's singular, which is annoying. But anyway, so it should come as no surprise that when DC was rebooting into the New 52, they wanted the Teen Titans as one of the first of the 52 titles they were releasing. What probably is surprising is that when they did this, they decided to reboot the team entirely, starting over completely from scratch as though the Teen Titans had never existed before in history at all. Sounds like a pretty risky move to me, so let's see how that paid off for them as we take this away. The comic opens by very slowly introducing us to the main characters of the story, and I do mean very slowly. Basically, all of the first 7 issues of the series are just spent introducing us to the characters and pretty much nothing else. We'll start on team leader Red Robin, also known as Tim Drake, though he'll spend the whole comic refusing to tell his teammates his real name. Tim was the third Robin, sidekick to Batman, following Dick Grayson and Jason Todd, though in this series they suggest he never really went by Robin and was always Red Robin. In the flashback 0 issue, we learn Tim had been actively seeking out Batman's secret identity to join his cause, but between Jason having recently been brutally murdered and Tim having a loving family, Batman wasn't willing to take him on as a sidekick and hampered Tim's efforts to learn the truth. So Tim instead became a Robin Hood hacker, get it? Cause, you know, Robin Hood? Stealing from the rich to give to the poor, but when he stole from Oswald Cobblepot, he nearly got his family killed. And that's why you never drink milk straight out of the carton, you gross pants. His parents went into witness protection, and Batman took Tim on as Red Robin to protect him, with Tim making changes to his costume different both from the standard Robin costume and from the hood and staff of the traditional Red Robin outfit to this more bird-like outfit with razor-sharp metallic wings and, like, a jetpack, I guess? Honestly, I always thought the hood and staff looked stupid, so I personally prefer this outfit, but I'm sure you guys will disagree. He doesn't seem to have remained Batman's sidekick for long though, and he has apparently been spending most of his time for the past undefined number of years being a sort of WikiLeaks type blogger, leaking info about an organization called Nowhere. Yep, that's an acronym. Or at least it's treated like one. But don't worry, it doesn't actually stand for anything. And the frustration readers might feel towards that is echoed by characters in the comic. But hanging a lantern on it doesn't make it less annoying that you clearly just wanted to call the organization Nowhere, and were maybe hoping that someone would eventually come up with something good for the acronym to stand for. If that's an indication of the kind of careful planning and execution we can expect from this whole comic, we're not off to a good start. After Nowhere breaks up Red Robin's little troll cave, he decides sitting and blogging on the interwebs just isn't enough, and it's time to take the fight straight to Nowhere. The organization Nowhere, not just you know what I mean. So he tracks down Cassie Sandsmark, better known as the second Wonder Girl, though here she's the first Wonder Girl, and she doesn't like being called that in this series. Before the New 52, she was Titan's team leader for quite some time, but here she's barely interested in being on the super team at all, let alone leading it. Here Cassie is a wild child and thief, always getting herself in trouble by stealing artifacts from archaeological digs that her mother, an actual archaeologist, would be overseeing. Her last find was some armor that she'll refer to as the silent armor because it makes itself invisible, and apparently for Cass, sight and sound are the same thing. The armor also includes her own lasso that drains life energy from her opponents, as opposed to the lightning lasso her previous incarnation had. Next, Red Robin seeks out a superhuman in LA, a new character called Skitter, who is sort of a spider cockroach person thing. In her Kafka-esque form, she's all wild, running on base instinct rather than brains, but sometimes she cocoons up and becomes human again, before eventually cocooning to go all spider roach again. She starts this for the first time that Robin sees as he attempts to take her on a train back across the US, where we also just happen to bump into another new character named Bunker. Bunker is Miguel Jose Barragan from Mexico, possibly named after Luis Barragan, a famous Mexican architect. As Bunker is able to create bricks with his mind that he can control, even changing the weight and density of them to make them as soft as marshmallows or hard as, well, bricks. Miguel is coded super heavily as being gay, so it's no surprise when he admits to it after a few issues. It honestly feels a little offensive just how much they tried to visually sell him as being gay straight from the beginning. Gay comes in all shapes and sizes, but it's fine, really, especially because Bunker is maybe the most enjoyable character of the whole series. He's super excited to just be a part of the story and join in on the adventures, and is just generally a ray of light in this comic that is going to try very hard to be as dark and bleak as possible. Just about the only light of classic Teen Titans shining through the deep need DC had for their New 52 comics to be dark and edgy. That brings us to our next few Titans, which will start with Bart Allen, aka Kid Flash. He shows up trying to help at a big fire, showboating for the cameras, but ends up making things worse and getting knocked out in a big backdraft explosion. When he wakes up, he's been captured by Nowhere, but when they underestimate his speed, he breaks out, rescuing a girl named Solstice along the way. Solstice is not a new character exactly, having joined the pre-New 52 Teen Titans just about a year or so before the reboot. There she was a normal-looking person with light powers, though, while here she's some kind of obsidian rock person with light powers. So, you know, it's different. The Nowhere base that had them captured was actually somewhere, and that somewhere was in the Antarctic, and Kid Flash can't seem to find a way home from there until suddenly he finds himself on a street leading straight to Red Robin's New York penthouse apartment. This street is sort of an unofficial member of the team named Danny, and he's a living, transgendered street that can teleport between any two locations. There's so many things about that I don't even know where to begin, but I guess there's not much point because Danny will barely appear in the comic. But you know what? Good for him for establishing gender identity despite being, you know, a street. That brings most of the team together, except for Cassie, who's still trying to pretend she wants to be on her own, and Nowhere, whose focus is on capturing teens with superpowers to, you know, quickly establish them as obviously the villain to be faced by a group called the Teen Titans, sends their primary weapon after Cass, and that is Superboy. Not much is revealed about Superboy in this series, as he has his own series during the New 52, where we learn that he was grown in a tank by Nowhere, raised to be a weapon and kill metahumans, people like Cassie. But the Titans make their debut appearance as a team in Times Square to stop him. They fight, but Superboy hands them their collective asses so bad that the Titans are forced to go on the run from the cops and seek help from Static at Star Labs, who designs a suit for Kid Flash to keep him from vibrating himself apart with his own speed. Despite their utter failure to face Superboy, when they learn that Nowhere has decided to terminate him, they risk everything to bring the fight straight to Nowhere and rescue him. They fail utterly, and get trapped by Harvest, this weird demon-looking dude who's the leader of Nowhere, which ends with them being forced to participate in a Hunger Games-style battle royale. Oh, or maybe it's more like battle royale, called the Culling. The goal of the Culling, besides just wanting to kill off teenage metahumans, is for Harvest to develop a dedicated warrior that is the absolute best at killing other metahumans, as he sees superheroes as the biggest threat to humanity, and possibly the citizens of other worlds too, as he comes from some potential future where that has proven to be true. The main purpose of this arc is really to have a crossover with Superboy and the time-displaced members of the Legion of Superheroes from their new 52 title Legion Lost, and to set up another title called the Ravagers, which would feature classic Titans Beast Boy and Terra, and other superhumans Nowhere had captured as participants in the Culling. The Titans in Legion Lost work together to free everyone and end Nowhere's plans, which I guess they basically do, though Harvest claims their effort only works towards his goals, as hundreds of wild teenagers with superpowers running free around the globe will only serve to convince people that metahumans are dangerous. But I mean, of course he does that. Supervillains never admit when they've lost. The future Ravagers in Legion Lost all manage to escape. Skitter vanishes to parts unknown for basically the rest of the series, and the Titans only barely manage to escape, somehow ending up on some mysterious island full of dinosaurs. Though with help from a severely injured Danny the Street, they manage to return home and never bother learning anything about the island, so it was kind of a pretty pointless aside. We move on to learning more about Cassie's past, primarily that her armor seems to have some kind of mind of its own, and the armor seems to only want destruction. Superboy and Robin attempt to deal with the armor problem, while Scott Lobdell has the two literally fighting as love interests for her affections, because this wouldn't be a story about teenagers if they weren't all trying to hook up with each other. Though they basically succeed in getting their armor off her thanks to Superboy's so-called tactile telekinesis, things only get more complicated when Cassie's ex, Diesel, shows up. Yes, he's really named Diesel. Apparently he was the first to put on the silent armor, but it seemed to be hurting him, so Cassie found some armor of her own and invited the entity in control of the silent armor to possess her instead. She thought Diesel died in the ensuing aftermath, but he survived and has returned to take back the silent armor, wanting to use it to fulfill its desires to destroy. Though it's not really clearly shown how, Cassie somehow again gets the armor back from him and returns home with both boys, though Superboy quickly flies off, probably to participate in Hell on Earth. And Robin also soon jets off himself because he also has a tie-in to participate in Death of the Family. But this isn't just a crossover with the Death of the Family story that was going on in the main Batman title, but also an excuse to have a direct tie-in with Red Hood in The Outlaws, a title, like this one, that was being written by Scott Lobdell, which maybe explains why that title was also garbage. Oh, spoiler. Sorry. It opens with Joker having somehow already captured Tim, though when and where that happened is never explained. Who needs details with the Joker anyway, am I right? Despite the fact that the Titans have only really existed for like 5 minutes continuity-wise and are barely even a team yet, Joker seems to know them well enough to have set traps specifically for them when they come to Gotham looking for Tim. Which is why there's some kind of dust in this abandoned building full of homeless people that is designed to be kicked up by Kid Flash rapidly running all over the building, spreading it to all the people and turning them into Jokerized zombies. Arsenal and Starfire, the outlaws from Red Hood and the Outlaws, show up looking for Red Hood, seeing as he's also been inexplicably kidnapped, and help the Titans contain the zombie people while Kid Flash, Wonder Girl, Starfire, and Solstice go to grab the ingredients for a cure that Arsenal was able to determine were available nearby. But Joker trapped this place as well, but though he took Kid Flash's speed into account for setting his initial trap, he apparently didn't account for it here. And Bart's able to outrun the explosives and save both the ingredients and his fellow heroes, which then allows them to cure all the people. The rest of the story I've pretty much covered in my Death of the Family video, so you can check that out for more info. Moving on, when the Titans get back from this ordeal, Robin moves them out of his apartment and onto a boat, so they can be all like, I'm on a boat! Because that was something that was still cool in like 2012, right? Oddly enough, despite how much they talk about how big the boat is, it apparently doesn't have enough space for them to each have their own room. Guess you weren't planning on the team ever growing then, huh, Tim? Rookie mistake. Tim then also proceeds to sleep with both Solstice, despite the fact that they've been trying really hard to put her together with Kid Flash, and with Cassie, despite the fact that they've been trying really hard to put her together with Superboy. Because again, that thing I said about teenagers being required to all hook up. But it seems that something may be weird about Robin, like he's maybe not in charge of himself, or could even be that someone else is disguised as him. They take a really long time to explain what happened, and even when they do, it still gets into some pretty seriously sexual assaulty type implications. But that's beginning to feel pretty par for the course for comics. Sigh. We see Robin acting further sus when he has the team attack Belle Reeve so we can have a Suicide Squad crossover. While he claims it's to rescue a teenage metahuman, that person apparently never existed, and really Tim just wanted to strike some unspecified deal with Waller. Tim then justifies his actions to his team by saying he doesn't need to justify his actions. Really acting like a leader now, Tim. But there's no time to worry about that because suddenly Trigun appears on the scene. Wait, that's not right. Oh, Trigon. There we go. Okay. The Dark Lord Trigon has apparently gone around conquering entire universes. And when he grew bored of that, he had a daughter, Raven. Raven's mom hid her away in a realm dedicated to peace, but eventually the character Phantom Stranger would return her to her father, and she would then come to join him in his world-conquering ways. But now that he's set his sights on Earth, Raven decides to stand in his way by seeming to side with the Titans, even bringing in Beast Boy from the already defunct Ravagers comic to aid the team. Even with Raven's help though, Trigon proceeds to simply wipe the floor with the Titans, who must be used to that by now, seeing as they have yet to win an actual fight. I mean, Superboy kicked their collective asses, as did Harvest, who they only got away from when his facility literally collapsed around them. Against the Joker, they did effectively nothing at all, and I guess we could say their battle with the Suicide Squad was effectively a draw. But despite that, when Trigun simply vanishes in the middle of having completely destroyed their team, they just kind of count it as a win, shrug it off, and move on. For her help in fighting dear old dad, they ask Raven to join the team, and she accepts, though she also accidentally spills the beans about Robin having slept with both Wonder Girl and Solstice. Just in case you felt the comic was lacking in some CW-style relationship drama, before revealing to us, the reader, that she's still working for dear old dad. Dun dun dun! Yeah, I'm pretty sure we all knew that though. Between this and our next issue, the events of Forever Evil happen, and at one point in that story, the crime syndicate speedster Johnny Quick realizes Kid Flash is out of time, and so he be all like, "My patience is wearing thin, I'm banishing you to a time warp from which you will never return." Like he be Shredder in Turtles in Time. You guys get that reference, right? So the Titans are all thrown about in space and time, doing things like preventing some alien invasion in ancient Egypt, and Robin coming across a pre-Titans bunker who he then tells to go meet him for the first time to kick off the events of the comic. This time travel has the added effect of severing Raven's connection with her father, and so she agrees to use her ability to split her soul to help her connect all the various Titans across time and bring them together. So Raven, Cassie, Tim, and Superboy all end up in a near future timeline where the entire Justice League, along with just about every other metahuman on Earth, has been killed. The last few metahumans are being trained X-Men style by a now adult Beast Boy. So, Beast Man, acting as Xavier in the remains of the Justice League Watchtower. It seems that this future is one where Superman and Lois Lane had a son named John Kent, and his half-human, half-Kryptonian DNA nearly killed him. But Harvest found him and saved him and raised him in his crusade of killing all metahumans, which John apparently proceeded to do. Superboy, who's also fittingly called Khan, we learn was a clone of John brought into the past as a further part of Harvest's plan, which is why everyone thinks Superboy is a bad guy and attacks him when he shows up here. Not much later, John also shows up, telepathically communicating with Superboy, since mental abilities like that are part of Superboy's powers, and the two have a fight that Superboy nearly wins. But Khan gets pulled away to parts unknown, which I'm guessing is the Krypton Returns arc where he then dies. One of the times. Anyway, John is rescued from death and put in Khan's place, joining the team as they launch even farther into the future to where Kid Flash and Solstice ended up. Here they learn that Kid Flash was raised as a sort of religious fundamentalist terrorist whose parents were killed by enforcers for a totalitarian aristocracy called the Functionary, simply for practicing their religion. Because the more actually bad guys there are on the team, the cooler they are, am I right? right? Kid Flash, or Bar-Tor as his future name apparently is, grew up on the streets stealing only what he can't afford, and that's everything. Always staying one step ahead of the lawmen so he could keep himself and his sister alive. Eventually, to protect her, he left his sister at a monastery and went off to join the Enforcers. They used him just to run contraband in unsafe environments until eventually, after an accident that should have killed him, he instead developed his super speed powers. Then he led rebels in terrorist attacks against the Functionary, until one day his sister, who had also joined the Functionary at some point, nearly died in one of these attacks. At this point, Bar-Tor gave himself up, offering to give information on his fellow rebels. So the Functionary put him into a time-displaced witness protection program, because that's a thing for some reason, while they gathered their case against the rebels together. Now back to the future, Bart is put on trial for his crimes, but it seems this was all a devious plot. Knowing the aristocracy running the Functionary couldn't resist coming to his trial, the whole event was a trap and his rebels show up to try and kill everyone at the trial, even the Teen Titans. But Bart's sister also shows up in some giant Death Star-like warship, threatening to kill everyone in the system, rebel and Functionary alike, so Bart surrenders. He's sentenced to a lifetime of hard labor on some distant planet, and though he begs the others to just let him go without putting up a fight, Solstice decides for some reason that she just can't live without him, even though they really haven't been portrayed as being that close. So she kills one of the judges so that she can be sentenced with him. Okay. The surviving Functionary members send the Titans home as thanks for their help, all except Superboy, who decides to stay in the future for some reason, where they immediately find themselves being attacked by these two guys calling themselves the Light and the Way, who want Solstice because their powers are unstable, and if they can absorb her, they can stabilize themselves. At least that's the theory, but they'll never find out because, again, Solstice didn't return with the Titans. Instead, one of the guys just kind of vanishes out of existence and Skitter shows up from out of freaking nowhere and takes down the other, though in the process the Titans do lose their boat. Here we learn that Skitter, who has developed the ability to speak rationally somewhere along the way, has a mother who is an agent of some top secret government thing, and she was the one who called Skitter away from the Culling. She was also being built up throughout the comic to be a villain, but that plot ended up going nowhere. Instead, she just helps clean up the Light and the Way mess, and we move on to our final story that sees the return of Harvest. It appears he's formed a commune in Africa where he has been reviving those who died during the Culling and helping metahumans remove their powers so they can live normal lives, leading to them all living peacefully and happily together. The teens aren't really buying Harvest's story of reform and regret though, and sure enough, it's all just some plan to build some kind of futuristic weapon using the removed DNA of metahumans. Or something. I don't know. Harvest doesn't seem to have sensible goals, guys. Raven destroys the meta DNA weapon just by touching it, and we get a brief little 80s movie ending of what became of everyone after this, like Skitter going back to working at Star Labs, which is where she had been working when she became Skitter, Red Robin returning to Gotham, Bunker and Beast Boy starting some company together, and Superboy being revealed to now be the herald for that giant Oracle guy we've seen pop up in some Superman stories. That had actually already been revealed by this point in his own series, but I thought you guys might like to know. None of this particularly matters though, because this is where the comic ends, and when we reboot with a new series immediately after this, much of this will be ignored. So why not go ahead and get to the breakdown. So let's ignore all the problems I've repeatedly had with other New 52 titles that I feel are making me sound like a broken record by this point, like the confusion of what has and hasn't already occurred in the past before this series, especially with the somewhat inexplicable and strange choices they made changing established history of popular characters, or the need DC had to push the series to be grittier and more cynical in an attempt to prove how dark and mature their characters can be, or the endless overuse of tie-ins with other comics, in this case Legion Lost, Ravagers, Batman, and Superboy, that makes it difficult for this series to stand on its own merits. And in the case of Superboy, required you to really follow two comics at the same time in order to fully understand what was happening in either one. Or the intentional sexualization of specifically female characters, which fell entirely on Cassie here, particularly at that point in the first volume where she wandered off on her own for no reason other than to be attacked by this weird tentacle monster out of a hentai nightmare. Don't try to tell me that's an accident. But again, I'll ignore all of that. I'll even forgive the super forced teenage romance drama that wasn't really working. Because the problem with this comic is that nothing happens, and the Titans achieve nothing. Even the characters themselves struggle to come up with examples of things they have done. In the final issue, Cassie attempts to convince Robin of all the good the Titans have done, and all she can come up with is saving the kids from the Culling, facing Joker, and stopping Trigon. That's it. 3 things. 3. And they didn't even really do all those things. Robin was the only one of them to face Joker, and that wasn't even a choice, and he barely did it. They didn't stop Trigon. The Demon Lord just kind of left for no reason. Even the one I could kind of give them, helping the Meta-Teens escape the Culling, that was really nowhere member Caitlin Fairchild, the Ravagers, and Legion Lost. All the Titans did was what they always did, get their asses handed to them by an opponent because they never got the breathing room to start developing as a team. I get that the teen heroes can't be shown to be as competent as their adult counterparts in the Justice League, but just give them lower stakes. Not every villain has to be as popular as the Joker or as world-ending as Harvest. Give them some fights they could win, because what people want from a Teen Titans comic is a chance for some teens to form bonds of friendship while facing adversity and overcoming it. Instead, we got a comic where they repeatedly failed, and then for seemingly no reason we're all like, but hey, we're the bestest of friends. You can tell us this stuff all you want, but we're not obligated to believe you until you show us. So that's why I'm giving this series a recommendation level of low. It's not completely awful, and there are things and moments that I like, but I don't know why you'd read this Teen Titans comic over basically any other that exists. The collected editions get 4 Red Robin logos and 1 Teen Titans. That's moving from pretty good to really good. Honestly, they're very strong collections. They all contain multiple pages of sketchbooks at the back, with volumes 1 and 2 being 7 issues long and volumes 3 and 4 being 6. Volume 5 is 7 issues and 2 annuals and still includes a cover gallery, so it's a lot in a single book. If you do like this series, they at least treat you nice with their collections. Thanks everybody for watching. What's your best nowhere acronym? Be sure to leave it in the comments below. I considered coming up with several, but the video was already feeling too long. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like and subscribe, because next I'll be covering the very next Teen Titans series following this one. Be on the lookout for that, and I hope to see you then, right here in the Comic Cave.